today kind of focus on this first part. Let's look at some scriptures that concern making a covenant with Antichrist. And what's the big issue here concerning making a covenant with Antichrist? What is its theological significance of them doing this? How does that relate to this and relate to this and relate to after the millennium? Because it's completely interlinked. So firstly, let's just look at Antichrist first. In Daniel chapter 8. In Daniel chapter 8, verse 9 onwards, there is this thing of the kingdom of Greece, which happened in history, but it's showing us that Antichrist is going to come out of that. In some way, Antichrist is going to come out of the same thing that happened with Greece. It's going to come out of that. Look at what it says. Okay, so from verse 5 to verse 8, we have a goat that comes out. And in verse 21, he tells us the shaggy goat represents the kingdom of Greece. And the large horn that's broken between his eyes is the first king. The broken horn and the four horns that arose in its place represent four kingdoms which will arise from his nation. Now this happened. The large horn was Alexander the Great. He spread the Greek kingdom as far as India. I mean, he was a major conqueror. He died in his 30s in Babylon. He died in Babylon, and no one is exactly sure of how he died. But he died in his prime. And then you had four of his generals that took power. Now this is where it's very interesting, because you had a Syrian king and you had an Egyptian king. And this is made very clear by the pattern of Israel's history. These two are very, very prominent, because the Syrian king is called the king of the north. The king of the north. And the Egyptian king is called the king of the south. And guess who's in the middle? Israel. Israel's in the middle. The king of the north wants to overcome the kingdom of the south. And the southern kingdom wants to overcome the northern kingdom. And there's this battle between them. Okay. Now, Antichrist is going to come out of this. So this happened in history. One of the Syrian kings was Antiochus IV, who called himself Antiochus Epiphanes, which means the manifest God. So he was portraying himself as divine. What's also interesting is that at the same time, the Egyptian king also called himself Epiphanes. They were both Epiphanes. They were both God manifested as a man in their claim. Isn't that interesting? Which signals, I'm not saying this is doctrine, but it signals that it's very possible at the time of Antichrist coming on the scene, there's not just one Epiphanes, there's several. Which one is the one? You know? That's why this is the major sign. This is a sign, but this is clear. So here it says in verse 9 of Daniel chapter 8, out of one of them came forth a rather small horn, which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the beautiful land. The beautiful land is Israel. So he grows exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the beautiful land. Now he's coming out of the north, Syria. Now, when I say Syria and Egypt, I'm using these terms because historically, the king of the north was Syrian. Historically, the king of the south was Egypt. But in the end, will he be from Syria? I'm fairly certain the southern king will be from Egypt, because every single time in Israel's history, the king of the south was always Egypt. But the king of the north changes. We'll see that just now. But in this time of the Greeks, the king of the north was Syria. And so here it says, he grew up to the host of heaven and caused some of the host and some of the stars to fall to the earth, and he trampled them down. The host of heaven here are Jews. So in Revelation chapter 12, where the dragon sweeps a third of the stars from the sky and casts them down to the earth, you've got the meaning of what that's about. A third of the Jews are going to fall, and he's going to trample them down. And it says here, and it even magnified itself to be equal with the commander of the host. That's the high priest. And it removed the regular sacrifice from him. This is the abomination of desolation. This is the abomination of desolation. He's going to remove the sacrifice from the high priest, the commander of the host. Why did it call Israel host? Because God promised Abraham, and maybe we need to look at this in the future, God promised Abraham that his descendants would be like the stars of the heavens. One day, Abraham's descendants are going to be like angels. Hosts, stars, speak of angels, and they speak of the descendants of Abraham. You're talking resurrection. Ultimately, it's resurrection and ruling, but we'll look at that. It's called the adoption as sons. That's what Scripture calls this, the adoption as sons, when those from earth are redeemed and made into rulers under God as his sons. It's a ruling too. And so here, the stars are those who those are Abraham's descendants who are destined to rule, but he's going to cause a third of them to fall to the earth and trample them. Now, some people see a picture of what happens with Israel here reflected in the heavenlies, with what happened in the beginning with the angels. A third of the angels followed Satan. They're taking that from Revelation. But Revelation, when you cross-reference it here, the context of Daniel is to do with Abraham's descendants, not angels. But what happens in earth, in some way, is parallel in terms of what happens in heaven. So it's possible that Satan drew a third of the angels after him. And then it says here, and the place of his sanctuary was thrown down. On account of the transgression, the host will be given over to the horn, along with the regular sacrifice. So in other words, this happens because the host, which is the descendants of Abraham, they sin, they have transgression. And therefore, this comes in judgment on Israel. It says here, it will fling truth to the ground and perform its will and prosper. Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to that particular one who was speaking, how long will the vision about the regular sacrifice apply while the transgression causes horror, so as to allow the holy place and the host to be trampled? And he said to me, for 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the holy place will be properly restored, which takes us into the millennium. Then, sometime in the millennium, later, not straight away after the millennium begins, but a number, I think, about 3 years that equals. It's 1,250 days from here to about here. So from here to 2,000 would be around 2,300 will be into the millennium. Then the holy place is going to be restored. Okay. If you look at Daniel 11, you will see that this is repeated, but in much more detail. In Daniel chapter 11, it gives you a whole list of what actually happened in the Greek history. So with the Syrian king, his son and 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 his son are all called the king of the north. Not the kings of the north, but the king of the north. they're all pictures of an ultimate king of the north. And it culminates in what's called a despicable person, verse 21. In his place, a despicable person will arise on whom the honor of kingship has not been conferred. But he will come in a time of tranquility and seize the kingdom by intrigue. He has a bow, but no arrows. A bow, but no arrows. So that's in Daniel chapter 11, verse 21. So he comes in a time of tranquility and seizes the kingdom by intrigue. That's the kingdom of the north. Wherever that northern kingdom is, he comes in a time of tranquility. Seal number 2 says, peace is taken from the earth. So there is this time of tranquility, which is like the calm before the storm. Because he comes in a time of tranquility, but his heart is actually set on war. He's not a peaceful guy. And so it says here, the overflowing forces will be flooded away before him and shattered, and also the prince of the covenant. After an alliance is made with him, he will practice deception, and he will go up and gain power with a small force. So they make an alliance with him, but he's practicing deception. And it says, in a time of tranquility, he will enter the richest parts of the realm, and he will accomplish what his fathers never did, nor his ancestors. He will distribute plunder, booty, possessions among them, and he will devise schemes and against strongholds. So this is the first seal here. He goes into the richest parts of the realm and takes the wealth and gives it to his the people with him. And then, in verse 25, he will stir up his strength and courage against the king of the south with a large army. Seal number 2. So he comes in time of peace, but his heart is set on war. He wants to conquer. He wants to take over kingdoms. And so it says here, the king of the south will mobilize an extremely large and mighty army for war and will not stand. Now what happens at seal number 5 here is, from that point on, he has absolute power, according to Revelation. He will rule the whole world for 3.5 years. So there, he's maneuvering. He's trying to take over. He takes over this kingdom. He works his way through. He fights against the king of the south because he wants ultimate domination. Okay. And then if you turn to verse 36, you'll see the king will do as he pleases. He will exalt and magnify himself above every god and will speak monstrous things against the God of gods. And he will prosper until indignation is finished, for that which is decreed will be done. So this is where, seal number 5, this is where he stands up in the temple and says, I am God. And look at verse 37. He will show no regard for the gods of his fathers or for the desire of women, nor will he show regard for any other god, for he will magnify himself above them all. Instead, he will honor a God of fortresses, a God whom his fathers did not know. He will honor him with gold, silver, costly stones, and treasures. So basically, he's magnifying strength. Stands against all earthly gods or gods that people worship. Says, worship me, but I stand for the God of strength, the God of fortresses. And then it says here, at the end time, the king of the south will collide with him, verse 40, and the king of the north will storm against him with chariots, with horsemen, with many ships. He will enter countries, overflow them, and pass through. He will also enter the beautiful land, and many countries will fall. But these will be rescued out of his hand: Edom, Moab, and the foremost of the sons of Ammon. Who are they? They are Jordan. All three of those are present-day Jordan. And then he will stretch out his hands against other countries, and the land of Egypt will not escape. But he will gain control over the hidden treasures of gold and silver, and over the precious things of Egypt. The Libyans and Ethiopians will follow at his heels, but rumors from the east and from the north will disturb him, and he will go forth with great wrath to destroy and annihilate many. He will pitch the tents of his royal pavilion between the seas and the beautiful holy mountain, yet he will come to his end, and no one will help him. So basically, he's got absolute power, but it's not easy. And in the end, he'll come to his end, and no one will be able to help him. But he will pitch his tent, his pavilion, in around the beautiful city. So you're going to see that not everybody's on his side. Not everybody is wanting to go with him, but no one's able to stop him. But at the end, he'll come to his end. No one will be able to help him. Does that make sense? So we're going to see this pattern of the north and the south. Okay. And look at Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 14. Is Israel a slave, or is he a homeborn servant? Why has he become a prey? The young lions have roared loudly at him. Have roared at him. They have roared loudly. They have made his land a waste. His cities have been destroyed without inhabitant. Now that's really going to take place in the sixth trumpet judgment, when a whole massive army, 200 million, a whole massive army come against Israel and massacre. Trumpet 6 is the locust judgment of Joel, where it says, before them the land is like the Garden of Eden, behind them a desolate wilderness. They're going to scorch the land of Israel, and they're going to bring judgment on the land of Israel. So from here to here, it just gets really hectic. It's actually all part of the same judgment, except the wrath falls in the trumpets and the bowls. And so here it says, the young lions have roared at him, they've made his land a waste, his cities have been destroyed without inhabitant. Also the men of Memphis and Tahpanhes have shaved the crown of your head, which means Egypt also judging. So the young lions, which we'll see is also Assyria, and Egypt both bring judgment to Israel. And it says here, have you not done this to yourself by your forsaking the way of the Lord, forsaking the Lord your God when he led you in the way? So he basically saying, you brought this on yourself. Now what I'm doing here is I'm taking a historical text that was concerning what happened to Israel at the time of the Assyrian Empire and the Egyptian Empire, and I'm taking truths and seeing how it applies here. Because remember, God works in patterns. Okay, so the same kind of things that happen there, you'll see contact points with the end, and therefore we'll get some truths out of here that's going to help us to understand this. So he says, have you not done this to yourself by your forsaking the Lord your God when he led you in the way? But now what are you doing on the road to Egypt to drink the waters of the Nile? So Israel went to Egypt to drink of their waters, to get their help. And then it says, well, what were you doing on the road to Assyria to drink the waters of the Euphrates? They play one off the other. Oh, help us, Assyria. Oh, now Assyria is doing the duty on us. Help us, Egypt. They go from one to the other. They play one against the other. They try and make alliances to save their own necks with these countries. And to make this alliance, they are the inferior party. These are the major parties. In other words, their gods have now triumphed over Israel's God. And that's the way it works. If an army took over, that meant their God was victorious over the God of the people who were conquered. God did not want them making alliances with these nations like this. And so here he says, your own wickedness will correct you, and your apostasies will reprove you. Know therefore and see that it is evil and bitter for you to forsake the Lord your God and the dread of me, is not in you. Making a covenant with Antichrist is a rejection of God. And because of this, that's why this happens. Because they do this. Look at what it says, I think it's in John chapter 5, verse 43. I have come in my Father's name, and you do not receive me. If another comes in his own name, you will receive him. Antichrist comes in his own name. He exalts himself above everything that's called God. They're going to receive him. Why? Because they rejected Yeshua. That's why they go for Antichrist. If you reject Jesus, you're going to accept Antichrist. If you reject me, who comes in the Father, the name of the Father, then you'll accept one who comes in his own name, which is Antichrist. So you've got this thing here now. We see that this is connected to this and connected to this. And because of what you share, it's connected to the Gog and Magog battle at the end of the 1,000-year reign, when Satan's released again. Because he's bound at the end of this one, at the end of this time, at the beginning of the millennium. Let's look at Jeremiah 3. And this is how God regards their covenants with these kings. God says, if a husband divorces his wife and she goes from him and belongs to another man, will he still return to her? Will not that land be completely polluted? But you are a harlot with many lovers, yet you turn to me, declares the Lord. Lift up your eyes to the bare heights and see, where have you not been violated? By the roads you've sat for them like an Arab in the desert, and you've polluted the land with your harlotry and with your wickedness. Therefore the showers have been withheld, and there's been no spring rain. For 3.5 years, from maybe about here, somewhere before this time, to here, for 3.5 years it will not rain. The two witnesses is going to cause the heavens to withhold their rain. It relates to this as well. It relates to this. Why is this going to happen? Because of their harlotries. Why? Because they're making alliances with these other kings, and with the kings, the gods of those kings. And so here it says, have you just now called to me? My father, you're the friend of my youth. Will he be angry forever? Will he be indignant to the end? Behold, you have spoken and have done evil things, and you have had your way. So Israel will call out to God, but where they call out with genuine repentance will be at the end. Therefore, he will not be indignant forever. But they're asking the question, God, are you going to be indignant forever? Will this never end? But God's calling them to repentance. You see this again in Hosea. Hosea chapter 12. Now this has come after Hosea chapter 11, where God says, when Israel was a youth, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. And then verse 5 says, they will not return to the land of Egypt, but Assyria, he will be their king, because they refused to return to me. So you've got the Syrian here in Israel's history. Before the Syrian, you first had the Assyrian, and you had Egypt, the king of the north and the king of the south. It's the same pattern. And then it says, okay, he feeds on wind. The word feeds there also means shepherds. He shepherds wind, and he pursues the east wind continually. In other words, it's a failed enterprise. Can't do it. He multiplies lies and violence. Moreover, he makes a covenant with Assyria, and oil is carried to Egypt. Oil was probably used here to make an alliance with someone. So it's either gift to buy favor, to make an alliance, or it was part of the covenant-making process. In other words, he's made a covenant with Assyria, but he's making it with Egypt as well. plays one off the other. The Lord also has a dispute with Judah and will punish Jacob according to his ways. He will repay him according to his deeds. Now look at this. In the womb he took his brother by the heel, and in his maturity he contended with God. Yes, he wrestled with the angel and prevailed. He wept and sought his favor. He found him at Bethel. Even there he spoke with us. Even the Lord, the God of hosts, the Lord is his name. So what you've got here is, in looking at this whole thing here, God is using that to say, you're just like your ancestor, Jacob. Always striving. You strive with man and you're striving with God. But they prevail. How do they prevail? Because in the end, their strength is taken away. The angel touched Jacob's hip and he lost his strength. And then he was holding on. And he said, I won't let you go until you bless me. Why? Because Esau's coming with 400 men to kill him. Armageddon. In other words, God's saying, you're struggling. Just like your forefather, you're struggling with man and you're struggling with God. But in the end, you're going to be crying out for salvation. I'm going to wrestle with you. So the wrestling is going to start here at this time. And it's going to continue through this time of wrestling God is going to bring Israel into. And so he says in verse 6, therefore return to your God. Observe kindness and justice and wait for your God continually. A merchant in whose hands are false balances, he loves to oppress. False balances? What that's to do with? Jacob is the trickster. Jacob is the trickster. He conned his brother, or he tricked his brother into selling the birthright. Now, Esau sold his birthright. That means his, he gets a double portion of the inheritance for being the firstborn, because he's the one that's supposed to look after the father when the father dies. So you get, out of all the inheritance that's split up, the firstborn gets the double portion. He sold that to Jacob. So Esau doesn't deserve anything. He despised his birthright. But Jacob didn't do it in an honorable way. And then he stole the blessing, which is the Messiah will come through you. The Messiah will come through you. You will be the chosen people of God, taking Abraham's covenant. He stole the blessing from Esau. He's the trickster. And so he oppresses. He oppresses and he has false balances. False balances and false scales. In other words, he's ripping people off. He's ripping people off. This is why this is coming. They make a covenant with Antichrist and they oppress and they have false balances. Jerusalem's not going to be a place you want to go to if you want people to treat you respectfully.
And it's Babylon.
They're gonna squeeze every last penny out of you if they can. That's the way it's going to be. And it says here, Ephraim said, surely I have become rich, I have found wealth for myself, just like Babylon. In all my labors they will find in me no iniquity which would be sin. It's like, I'm doing all this, but hey, I'm not a sinner. That's the mindset they will have. They were seriously deluded into thinking there's nothing wrong with it. Look at what it says here. But I have been the Lord your God since the land of Egypt. I will make you live in tents again as in the days of the appointed festival, Feast of Tabernacles. Israel nourished in the wilderness, in tents, just like when they came out of Egypt, in tents in the wilderness. It's the same thing again. I've also spoken to the prophets, and I gave numerous visions, and through the prophets I gave parables. Is there iniquity in Gilead? Surely they are worthless. In Gilgal they sacrifice bulls. Yes, their altars are like the stone heaps beside the furrows of the field. False worship. They will be false worship. Even today there's false worship, mysticism, New Age, false worship. So there's going to be idolatry and false spirituality. Okay. Let's look at same thing again. Isaiah 7 verse 1. Same thing happened in Ahaz's time. King of Judah. And what happens is two kings, the king of the northern kingdom, which is Israel. You have two kingdoms in Israel at the time of Solomon, who is David's son. So David was the king over all Israel. His son was the king over all Israel. And then his son Rehoboam wanted to be much harsher than his father Solomon. And so some of the tribes, 10 of the tribes, broke away and said, "You're not our king." And they made another person, Jeroboam the son of Nebat, as the king of Israel. And so the king of the south, Judah, he is called the kingdom of Judah, or the house of Judah. He ran Judah and Benjamin. So you had these two kings in Israel, the king of the house of Israel and the king of the house of Judah. Now the house of Israel teamed up with the king of Syria to come against Judah. Okay, that's what happened in Ahaz's day when he was king of Judah. And so, when he does that, he gets scared. And according to 2 Kings 16, verse 7 to 8, he makes a covenant with Assyria. So now Judah is doing what Israel did. Help us, Assyria, against Israel and against Syria. He makes a covenant. And so it says here, okay, let's go to verse 10. The Lord spoke again to Ahaz, saying, "Ask a sign for yourself from the Lord your God. Make it as deep as Sheol or as high as heaven." But Ahaz said, "I will not ask, nor will I test the Lord." Now that sounds very noble. No, I'm not going to ask a sign to test God. What's he doing? Making a covenant with Assyria. He's been testing God. God told him, "Ask me a sign." So to ask God for a sign would not be to test God. You're just obeying what God says. Going to Assyria to make a covenant with them is to test God. You got the sense of spirituality and what is righteous and what is sinful is completely upside down. So that good is evil and evil is good. And they really believe they're doing the right thing. And so it says here, in verse 13, then he said, "Listen now, O house of David. Is it too slight a thing for you to try the patience of men, that you will try the patience of my God as well? Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, a virgin will be with child, and will bear a son, and she will call his name Emmanuel. He will eat curds and honey at the time he knows enough to refuse evil and to choose good. For before the boy will know enough to refuse evil and choose good, the land whose 2 kings you dread will be forsaken." So those 2 kings that are coming, their lands are going to be forsaken before the boy knows enough to choose good and evil. So that has an application for Isaiah's day. You'll see from chapter 8, verse 1 onwards, you have the son born called Maher-shalal-Hashbaz from one encounter with a virgin maiden, prophetess, and he writes the name of this boy on a stone, and he guesses that this is going to be a boy. She's going to conceive from that one encounter, and it's going to be a boy. That's a sign. That's a definite sign for the people of his day, and he did it with 2 witnesses. Wrote the boy's name on the stone. Maher-shalal-Hashbaz. Speedy is the spoil. Speedy is the prey. The judgment is coming. And what do they judge? What's the judgment? It says here in verse 17, "The Lord will bring on you, on your people, and on your father's house such days as have never come since the day that Ephraim separated from Judah, the king of Assyria. In that day, whenever you see the term that day in Scripture, it says something. There's something about that that's speaking about the day of the Lord. In that day, the Lord will whistle for the fly that's in the remotest parts of the rivers of Egypt, and for the bee that is in the land of Assyria. They will all come and settle on the steep ravines, on the ledges of the cliffs, and all the thorn bushes, and all the watering places. And that day the Lord will shave with a razor, high from the regions beyond the Euphrates, that is, with the king of Assyria, the head and the hair of the legs, and it will also remove the beard. Now in that day a man may keep alive a heifer and a pair of sheep, but because of the abundance of the milk produced he will eat curds, for everyone left within the land will eat curds and honey. And it will come about in that day that every place where there used to be 1,000 vines, valued at 1,000 shekels of silver, will become briars and thorns. People will come there with bows and arrows, because all the land will be briars and thorns. As for all the hills which used to be cultivated with the hoe, you will not go there for fear of briars and thorns. This curse. The land is going to be cursed like the curse that was put onto Adam right at the beginning. There will become a place for pasturing oxen and for sheep to trample. So what you've got is, what God is saying about that time there is a picture of what's going to happen at the end. These people that they're trusting in will turn against them and will come against them at a time when the land is going to become cursed. Briars and thorns, and so they'll feel emboldened. We can go against the land. We're heading for perilous times. And lastly, let's look at Zedekiah in Ezekiel. Ezekiel chapter 17. Verse 11. Moreover, the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Say now to the rebellious house, do you know what these things mean? Because God gave him a picture of an eagle and a vine. And it says here, Behold, the king of Babylon came to Jerusalem, took its kings and princes, and brought them to him in Babylon. He took one of the royal family and made a covenant with him, putting him under oath. He also took away the mighty of the land, that the kingdom might be in subjection, not exalting itself, but keeping his covenant, that it might continue. But he rebelled against him by sending his envoys to Egypt, that they might give him horses and many troops. So Zedekiah's time, the same thing happened. The king of the north is Babylon. Why is the Babylon, even though it's in the south, called the king of the north, or the northern kingdom? Because when they came to Israel, they went up to Syria. They started in Iraq, went up to Syria, and from Syria, they were going to come down into the land of Israel. They're called the northern kingdom. Jeremiah says, evil's coming from the north. He's speaking about Babylon. Babylon is the king of the north. Egypt, once again, is the king of the south. They're in covenant with Babylon. But then they backstab Babylon by making a covenant with Egypt. Always playing one against the other. And so it says, will he succeed? Will he who does such things escape? Can he indeed break the covenant and escape? As I live, declares the Lord God, surely in the country of the king who put him on the throne, whose oath he despised and whose covenant he broke, in Babylon he shall die. So Zedekiah was taken to Babylon and he died there. Now look what it says in verse 18. Now he despised the oath by breaking the covenant, and behold, he pledged his allegiance, yet did all these things. He shall not escape. Now look at this. Therefore, thus says the Lord God, as I live, surely my oath which he despised, and my covenant which he broke, I will inflict on his head. I will spread my net over him, and he will be caught in my snare. And then I will bring him to Babylon and enter into judgment with him there, regarding the unfaithful act which he has committed against me. So in other words, what they did to Babylon by going to Egypt was wrong, because they have broken covenant and broken faith with the king of Babylon. And God is saying, you're not going to escape from Babylon. Babylon's going to decimate you. But you think you can escape from me? Look at what's happening with Babylon. You're not going to escape there. Zedekiah, you're going to go to Babylon. You're going to die there. There's no way you can get out of that judgment. But hey, I'm God. You broke covenant with me. If you want to escape with Babylon, how much more with me? And so we have desolations right until the end, which we'll see in the future, ends with their repentance. And that's what turns everything upside down. So let's just re-look at some of these points to conclude. So this covenant with Antichrist, the first seal, the rider going out, and he's going to conquering and to conquer. He's after other territories, especially Egypt. But there's this battle between the two. It's likely that this southern kingdom will be Egypt, because it was Egypt here, it was Egypt here, it was Egypt here. It's likely to be Egypt there. He comes out of Greece, but also Scripture calls him the Assyrian as well, as we'll see in the future. There's this thing of him being connected to Assyria. In the last days it talks about Assyria. It's also very interesting that in, I think it's Isaiah 19, Assyria and Egypt will eventually be reconciled with Israel and become one people, 3 parts of one people of God. So it's possible that the king of the north in the end will be Assyria and the king of the south will be Egypt. But that's just speculation. But there's a king of the north, king of the south. Israel, because the pattern is consistent, very highly likely they're going to play one king of the other king. But making the covenant with this one and making the covenant with the king of the south, to God is treachery. And it's because they've rejected the Messiah Jesus. Also rejecting the true way of God, this is what's going to be around. They're going to oppress. They're going to use false balances. They're going to be involved in idolatry. They're probably going to be persecuting fellow Christians, Jewish believers. Why? James 5. Come now, you rich, weep and howl for the miseries that are coming upon you, because the labor of the vineyard, the laborers that tended your work, that cries out against you because you withheld wages from them, and it calls them murderers. So it's got murder here, because by withholding the wages, how are they going to eat? And so oppressing the poor is a major theme that comes into judgment in the prophets. They were involved in idolatry and oppressing the poor, using false balances, cheating and murdering. And so therefore, the Great Tribulation will fall on Israel. But us, we also will drink of that. Not because we've done anything wrong. And that's the thing. Jesus, when he died on the cross, didn't do anything wrong. He died for our sins. So we also will suffer because of the sins of Israel. Identifying with them in their affliction, that God would use that to bring about their repentance. And so here, this is the time of judgment for them, but it's going to be followed by this day of the Lord. So this is a taster of that which is to come, which is culminating in this one day here. This is the big thing. This is when the armies are going to decimate the whole country. What happens to Jerusalem happens to the whole land in the 6th trumpet judgment. They have to reject the arm of flesh and come into complete reliance on the Lord. In their repentance, they will do that. And therefore, God will turn it all around.